Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and I teach watercolor, a new tutorial every week. And this week we are doing all the purple flowers, which actually is the very first project and tutorial I made for Let's Make Art back in the very beginning. And we never did a pre-recorded version, so here it is.
Awesome.
Yes.
It's exciting.
So, we have Keenan on cameras.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you for being here, Keenan. And we will be doing this project in 6 steps. So our very first step is we are going to be putting in the large flowers, starting kind of right in the middle here. Our second step is we will be putting in our large leaves. That's these guys here. Our third step, we will be putting in our medium-sized leaves. And then our fourth step, we will be doing our medium flowers. And our fifth and sixth step, we're kind of following that pattern. We will be putting in our small leaves and our small flowers. Okay, and this is how I approach just about any floral kind of bouquet loose painting, is I start from the largest parts first and then go smaller and out from there. Now we are using 5 colors for this project. These are Dr. P.H. Martin Radiant line, and our first color is Moss Rose. Our second color is Hyacinth Blue. Our third color is Daffodil Yellow. Our fourth color is Olive Green. And our very last color is black. If you have Dandelion paints, which is our in-house paint brand, you can use something similar. I would say I would use fuchsia for Moss Rose. I would use amethyst for hyacinth, or maybe even like a mixture of violet and a blue would get this. You can use lemon or dandelion yellow, and you can use leaf or emerald green for the green, and then black is black. Now we are using 2 paintbrushes, around 4 and around 2. If you only have around 6 and around 2, you can still use that as well. Yeah. You ready?
Ready.
All right, we're gonna do our oath first. So if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
And back in the good old days, I would change the oath every time we painted. But I decided just to stick with that one.
Just to keep people on their toes?
Yeah. Okay. So, before we get into the painting, I just want to go over 2 flower shapes with you guys, because you'll see that on our flowers here, we have some that are tilted away from us. So kind of like a 3/4 view or something, and then we have some that are straight on, okay? And when we are doing these flowers, the thought is just almost the same. How do I say this? They're all roses, and roses start tight in the middle and they get loose as they go out, okay? So when you're doing that front on, and I know that I've done this before, you kind of like to think of it as like a swirl. So if here's my center, okay, and then it swirls out, okay? But how we do that with our brush strokes is we start in the center, and then we do kind of alternating circular lines that get bigger and longer as we go out, okay? You see that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So this is when it's straight on, we're facing it, okay? If we wanted to have these flowers start to turn away from us, then what we do is we follow that same rule. Here's our center, and we do alternating lines, but we're gonna focus more on the bottom, because the top is turning away from us. We're only seeing a little bit of the top, okay? And then you gotta do the side of the flower itself. You see that?
Yep.
So These three are facing, going to the side. These ones are straight on. Now, I want to call out that in this one, I didn't actually do lines like I did on the other ones. This one, I just did a darker value center like so, and then the side of the flower, which kind of communicates the same thing, right? That there's like, it goes in here, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's one other, well, we're gonna do buds, but I also have another technique for doing flowers. They're called a scribble flower, and when we get there, I'll show you how to do it, but I just want to call out that we will be painting one a different way. And then I think we're ready to get started, okay?
Okay.
Now, if you want to use a pencil and lightly sketch out the placement of your flowers, you're free to do that. I like to live on the edge, and I like to just go for it. But you do whatever makes you feel comfortable.
With a throwback phrase.
Okay, so our very first flower is going to be a combination of our hyacinth and our moss. And you're gonna get this like super vibrant pink purple color.
Oh my
I
God.
know,
Such
right?
a pretty color. Holy cow.
One of my favorite colors to paint with. So beautiful. Okay, so I have this gorgeous like pink purple color. And then when I do my flowers, first of all, I know I said you can sketch them. So I don't sketch them, but sometimes what I'll do is I'll use my hands and just like think flower, 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 flower. So I'm just kind of like mentally putting them. And I know that sounds silly, but for me, it helps me understand where I'm actually gonna put this thing. And I never start with putting a flower right in the direct center of my paper, ever. I always kind of go off to this side. So I'm gonna do my first side flower. It's gonna go here. I'm roughly about 2 or 3 inches in, and I'm gonna start with my center. And I'm almost halfway down, but not quite. Is that halfway down, Keenan? I can't really see from overhead.
Yeah.
Halfway down? Okay.
Yeah.
A few inches in. And I'm gonna do the same thing that I just kind of sketched out for you, which is I have my center here. And then I'm just gonna do alternating lines that go around it using my round 4. And doing more alternating lines on the left-hand side or on the bottom part than the top, okay? And then I'm gonna rinse my brush, and using just water, I'm gonna kind of blend. I don't want to totally erase the lines, but I want some of them to get a little bit messy, okay? And then with that color that's still on my brush, I'm gonna go to the base of where this flower is coming out, like the base of the flower. And using just water, I'm gonna kind of make that shape. Then I'm gonna drop in the color. You're gonna help it move. And if you gotta like adjust the top of your flower to fit the base, you can.
That is a cool looking flower.
And this is supposed to be like loose, a little bit funky.
Funky fresh.
Yeah. Okay, and there's my first flower. Good job.
Nice.
And now I'm gonna take some of that moss rose, and I'm gonna mix a tiny bit of my yellow in there. Just get like a warmer pink. And for this flower, this one the center, I'm gonna go about 2 inches. And there will be kind of a gap in between these flowers, and it's gonna be up a little bit. It's not gonna be directly across from it. It's gonna be about here. And for the center this time, I'm just kind of doing like a bowl, like that. Use water and blend the top part, okay? And then still using that same paint color that's still on your brush, you're gonna paint the base of your flower. And try and have it be kind of round, like so. And then you can drop in some color. Let that kind of blend. Okay. And now we got our third flower. This one is going to be more like this one, except in this color, and it's going to be coming out down, okay? So I got my moss rose with a little bit of yellow. I'm going to start with the center. And again, I'm just kind of eyeballing it, so I'm going to do the center here, and it's going to kind of connect back up in here. So you got your center, alternating lines. So. Now we're kind of doing them next to each other. They're not fully overlapping at this point. We're not painting on top of each other.
These pinks and purples are great colors.
Aren't they fun? I love to just do little drops of like vibrant color. I'll even go back into the center sometimes when it's still wet and just like drop them, and it'll just like go.
Wow.
Okay, I'm going to do one more flower here, and then we're going to go into step 2. We'll be putting in our larger leaves. Actually, I lied. I'm going to do 2 flowers. Okay, so I don't want to paint on top of it, but when I do my flower here, I'm going to pretend like it's underneath it a little bit. Does that make sense? So when I reach the edges of these flowers, I'm going to lift up my brush instead of painting over it. Okay?
Got it.
So I'm going to grab this purple color, and I'm going to add a little bit more hyacinth to my purple mixture just so it's a different hue of purple. And I'm going to start in the middle and then alternating circular lines. Okay? And then I'm going to take my water and continue it using water and kind of connect some of these, let them get a little bit messy. And then my very favorite thing to do is when this is nice and wet, I'm going to drop in more color and just kind of let that go.
Oh man.
It's going to move and it's going to bleed and it's going to be gorgeous, and you're just going to love it for what it's doing, okay?
I'm loving it.
Now, the other kind of flower that I talked about at the beginning is called a scribble flower. I don't know what type of flower this is. This is just a fun, loose flower that I've been doing for a long time, and I have a real love for it, okay? So what I do is I take my brush and I pick a color, whatever color that I want. I'm going to do this flower here, and it's going to be right up here. And this one, I'm literally doing a scribble. Lifting up my brush, letting it be curves, lines, all this stuff, okay? It's a scribble. Then I'm going to take just water, and along the edges, going to touch the edges of these scribbles, and it's just going to blend out and bleed.
Beautiful.
And then, because you all know me, drop in even more color in that center. And that is a scribble flower.
It's a beautiful scribble flower.
And I love it. I love scribble flowers. I just think they're fun. Okay. Now, this is where we're going to move on to step 2 and start putting in our leaves. But I want to call attention to something before we do, which is now is a good time to look at where your placement is of your flower bunches on your paper itself. Looking at this, it seems like, most of it is happening in the top half. It's not directly moved down, where if I'm going off my reference photo, this whole thing maybe would have been moved down a little bit. That's not a problem, but as I'm adding more leaves and flowers and moving on to further things, I'll probably add another larger flower down here to center my main composition again, instead of just keep going. Because if I just keep going and following this exactly without addressing the fact that this is mostly on the top of my painting, then when I'm done, it's going to feel top heavy. Okay, so I'm telling you this because I want to give you guys the tools to solve problems as you go, instead of just telling you to do exactly what I say. Because one, that's really hard to do, and two, everybody paints differently. So even if I say do exactly what I say, it's not going to be exact. So if you are noticing that your composition as a whole is maybe too high or too low on your paper, then as you're adding more elements, keep that in mind and try and add more like anchor pieces to different spots that will center your composition, okay? And I would consider the large pieces, the large florals and leaves, more my anchor pieces. Because that's what draws the eye, and that's what's gonna mostly inform the composition. And then when we get to the smaller ones, I'll show you guys how to deal with those, okay? So I do have a large leaf coming off this way, but to again kind of anchor my painting and put it back to the center, I'm gonna do another flower right here. And this one I really liked that like peach color that I got with the moss rose pink. I'm gonna add that. So this one I'm gonna do more like a traditional rose, center, alternating. And I'm using kind of more the tip of my round brush to do these rose lines than the edge. Then I'm gonna rinse my brush and using the edge, blend it up, add some water. Oh yeah. And then of course, a little extra drop of color in there. And let that move.
Lovely.
Okay, now I feel like this is more central in my paper instead of top heavy. I'm gonna do my leaf. So I'm gonna grab some olive green and mix a little bit of yellow in there. And then I'm going to draw my leaf like so. And then I'm gonna draw the serrated edges. So it's just gonna come out, go back in, come out, go back in. You do not have to do serrated edges if it's easier for you to do just kind of a smooth leaf. And then using water in the color that I already put down, blend, and I love just dropping it. I'm gonna mix a little bit of black into this.
That looks awesome.
And just kind of drop in some color.
Whoa.
Like so. Ooh, look at that. I did some yellow in there.
That looks awesome.
Okay, I have two more big leaves. I have one coming out this way and one coming out over here. So I'm gonna kind of draw it. But it's underneath this flower, okay? So I'm just kind of envisioning and lifting up my brush whenever I run into something, doing the serrated edges. And then using just water. And if your flower is still wet and you touch it with green, it will bleed. So I just leave like a little thin white line, or you can wait until your flower is totally dry. I'm gonna drop some yellow in there. Do kind of more of a point at the top. You can always reshape your leaves later, so don't stress about that. Okay, and then same thing on the left-hand side. I'm gonna turn my paper so I don't put my wrist in my leaf. And this one, I don't wanna make my leaf too big, because if I do, I will get too close to the edge here. And you always wanna be mindful of that. When your composition gets really close to the edge, then that affects the eye of the viewer. It's gonna go straight to that. It's gonna feel like it's falling off the painting. Composition-wise, it's gonna make your viewer feel a little bit uneasy. So that's why you gotta be aware and leave a good space around the edge, unless the entire composition goes almost to the edge. But for the most part, you wanna leave yourself breathing room between your subject and the edge of your paper. Okay, first of all though, look at this texture that's going on here. Do you see that?
Has a life of its own in it.
Hello, that is so cool. Okay.
It did its own serrated edges inside.
Yeah, it's just like, you think you can do cool serrated edges? Watch this.
Hold my stem.
Okay. Okay. That was step 1 and 2. Now we're moving on to step 3. We're going to start putting in our stems of our leaves. So I need a little bit more green. And I'm still using my 4. And I'm going to put a stem coming in out this way. Now whenever you add your stems of flowers or leaves, I just want to call attention. You'll notice that I have none that go straight up and down or straight to the side. There's always a soft curve in the stems, okay? And that's because when you do strong straight lines within a composition, it creates a line. And that's okay in some paintings, like when you're doing like cityscapes or landscapes or things like that. You want strong lines, right? Because you want to define the horizon and the shape of buildings and things like that. When we're doing loose florals, where it doesn't make sense to have like a straight up stem, what that is going to do is create an implied line through your composition, and your eye is just going to go in whatever direction that straight stem is pointing. And so you kind of always want to curve it. And I also want to point out that I curve it back in. For example, I have this kind of curving to the right. I have this curving out to the right and then going back in. This one, it's the opposite. This one is curving in, this one is curving in. And then so I don't have them all going curved the same way, because that will also create a movement within my painting. And so I switch up the curves and where they are to have people just go in and out of my painting. One is sending you this way, one is sending you this way, so you're staying in. If both were to send you out, then that's where your eye would go, and your eye would just go out of the painting.
On to the next.
And it's not, I want to just point out that implied lines or things like that in a composition are not bad. They're not bad because you can actually use that as a tool to create a visual journey for your viewer. So just be mindful of it. Where maybe if you're doing a large composition and you have a floral at one point and there's something else going on in the painting, you can have your floral lines go in the direction of where you want that viewer's eye to go, and back and forth. So like, I don't want to say that what I'm trying to say is you can use this information as a tool to do what you want the viewer's eye to do. Just be aware of it.
Nice. Okay,
so we're going to start, and I'm going to do my leaf kind of coming off this way. So it's going to curve kind of out. And I'm going to do leaf shape. I like to do narrow at the bottom, thick in the middle, and narrow at the top. Okay. And then I just do vertical hold to do my stem thin line. Okay. And then leaves from there. Now let's say you do your leaf and it just, I remember when I taught this, actually somebody was just like, my leaves look like pickles. That was Sarah Galbraith, I think. But
that's funny.
If that happens, just sharpen them up. Make a point. That's it. That's all you got to do. And don't forget to rinse your brush and utilize water so you can get different values in this painting. Okay? So there's one. I have like a bigger one coming out this way, over here. Now these leaves are bigger than the one that I just put down. Okay. Some coming out down here.
This is a nice, light, loose project.
Oh yeah.
It's very fun.
It is fun, and it's funny, like now that I've been teaching and doing these projects every week for a couple of years, this is a very ambitious painting just because there's so many elements involved. Oh. And so you guys who painted this, you are amazing. And there is a lot going on here. So if you're feeling a little bit like, oh my gosh, there's so much, like that's because there is. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just funny that I was just like, we're gonna tackle this huge compositional beast.
That is super funny.
But you learn as you go, you know? Same for me, same for you.
How the turntables.
Okay. That looks pretty good. And I want to say that with all the things that I just told you in terms of composition and lines, your painting will also inform you as you go. So let's say you're like, oh shoot, I have my leaf going out this way. Is that creating too much of a strong implied line? Well, if you notice that it is in yours, and I'm not even saying that it totally will, if you notice that it is, you can put another one that curves back the opposite way next to it that's smaller. So you can adjust it as you go. I always feel like painting, especially when you're doing loose and not off of like exact, you know, realistic photo or something, it's a dance. And it's going to inform you as you go. And sometimes you're going to move this way, and then you're going to be like, oh, I got to go move this way. And you're just kind of stepping back and forth a little bit, you know? So I want to say that that's allowed.
It's like a dance.
That's literally what I just said.
It's like a dance.
Did you hear me say that?
I thought I'd repeat it.
Okay,
Just make sure it's clear. It's like a dance.
Yes. Did you guys get that?
It's like the dance of life.
Keenan, can you help them? Can you remind them one more time?
It's like a dance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you guys get that? Okay. So, I got another rose flower up here. So I'm going to put that in. These are now my medium flowers, so I'm going to try and have them be a little bit smaller. Just, you don't want them too big. If they're too big, that will be like what in my mind like an anchor flower, which will then adjust the composition a lot. But if you need that, because you need to like shift the weight of where your flowers are, you can do that. And drop in some strong color. Oh gosh. Tell me that's not pretty, you know what I mean? How these colors
Do you want me
just...
to tell you that?
No.
Because that would be rude.
Please don't.
No, that is super pretty.
And you'll see my wrist got caught over here. I have a little green mark. I can do two things. I can try and lift it. So just using water and try and make sure to have clean water. You can rub the area, not hard, and then take your paper towel and pick that up. Or you could just do like another leaf stem kind of coming out around it and kind of cover.
Make it grow.
Yeah.
Like Jack's beanstalks.
Yes. Okay, and I'm gonna do another purple flower down here because again, I want to kind of like center mine and it's still feeling a little bit top heavy. I added that flower to help, and now I'm gonna add another one over here to add to that, bringing it into the center a little bit more. Do hyacinth and moss rose, get that vibrant purple color again. And I'll do a scribble flower here. Scribble, scribble. Okay. And then use just water and touch the edges. Okay. And a scribble flower is also really great to use in places that you need to, like white spaces. For example, I have a white space in the very center of my composition. And it's not big enough to do a whole flower. It's not big enough to do a whole leaf. What do? You don't want just this hole in the middle. You can utilize the start of a scribble flower and just do it kind of small. Then kind of blend out. And it fills up the space and it looks like another flower underneath.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay. So, I'm gonna do also some like bud flowers. Is that what they're called? Like little...
Budding. They're
Yeah.
budding.
Yeah, like they almost like look like grapes a little bit.
I like grapes.
Where it's just like, they... If anyone knows this type of flower, please say it. But it's like, I'm just gonna do little dots here. and I want them to feel like they're falling. So you'll notice that I'm not having them go straight out in a cone shape. I'm having them go out and fall as if gravity is pushing them down.
Yeah, these are grapes.
Who doesn't like grapes in their bouquets though?
I don't know.
There's got to be a flower that looks like this. And then I just take a damp brush and kind of like introduce some water to this and let these colors like bleed and do their own thing. Yeah, oh my gosh, isn't that pretty?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Coming out here. So again, it like comes out and then it falls. Gravity's pushing on it, you know?
I Googled droopy ball flowers,
Yeah?
but I'm not really getting what you're painting.
Well, I think that's the joy of painting, and maybe why I like it so much is because I'm just like, we're gonna make up a flower.
Yeah.
And I'm allowed to do that, and you're allowed to do that because you're an artist.
Absolutely.
And you can make the world however you want it to make. I also want to say that I am not following the rules of gravity on this entire composition. I'm not. So in my world, sometimes gravity exists and sometimes it doesn't. And that's okay. All right. So now we're going to put in, we did our medium stems and our medium flowers, and now we're kind of moving on to our very last two steps, which is our small flowers and our small leaves. So this is where you kind of go around the edge of your painting and start adding smallers of these two things in different colors to make it feel full. We put like, this is the anchor of our composition. That has been defined, and now we're just kind of filling it up now. So I'm gonna do little buds coming out this way. And they're just kind of like oval shaped with a point. And if you want to like put in a tip of a different color in there and touch them when they're wet, you can.
Purple grapes look a lot like lavender.
Okay, lavender is a little bit more
Stringy.
Yeah.
But they like to group them together.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I'll lift this color up and lighten that. Ooh, look how pretty that like pink purple color is I got.
Oh, yeah.
Got that. And then I'm going to use this moss rose. Mix it with a little bit of hyacinth. And I'm going to do kind of more buds, like the buds of flowers. So they're going to be a little bit more round. And then I'm going to use a dark pink at the base of these buds. And let that bleed like so. Now I'm going to start putting in some leaves. And don't forget to adjust your greens. Add a little bit more yellow in there to make them a warmer yellow. Add a little bit of, I bet you can add hyacinth into this green and get like a desaturated blue green. Oh yeah, look at that. That's a good green. Right there. I just love, for me, I feel like it adds visual interest to a painting to switch up what you're painting by value and hue. So add water to get lighter values. Add different colors to get different hues. Okay. And this we got to connect it to a stem. So and as you're doing this part, this is where it's super helpful to maybe take a step away from it as you're painting this part and really get a feel for the overall composition of your painting. Because when you're super close to it, there are some things that you can't see. Just doing a stem with leaves. These leaves I'm making a little bit more round, thicker. Let's move up over here. Do some more yellow stems coming off this way. So.
Oh man, if you have any gold color,
Ooh.
this would look really good in it with some gold.
Yeah. The other thing I want you guys to pay attention to is what colors are you using on the very edge of your painting. That's why I like to do things like these buds, because that way the very edge of my bouquet is not all green. I have some color other than green kind of along the edges. So then it doesn't feel like a target, you know?
I think there was a tutorial where I asked you to do a purposeful implied line.
Yeah, so if you guys find a tutorial, it's on black watercolor paper. It was with the metallic
Yes.
watercolors on black watercolor paper, and Keenan asked me to like actually create implied lines with my leaves and stuff to problem solve out of it if you guys do that. So, and I do it.
Yeah.
I show you guys, like, if you accidentally put like straight up,
You nail it.
I did it. So even if you accidentally do that within your painting, it's not lost. You just have to adjust other elements. So you guys can take a look at that if while you're painting, you're like, shoot, I did like a leaf that goes like straight up in the middle of my thing, a stem, and I don't know like what to do about it now. Check it out. Okay. So I'm just kind of going around my entire thing and adding these smaller elements. Ooh, I'm going to switch to my round 2 for these smaller ones. Basically, if you're painting smaller areas and smaller things, you're going to want to use smaller brushes. If you're painting larger areas and larger things, then larger brushes are your friends. And you can go as tiny as you want to. Again, this is your world. So maybe you want like the tiniest of little stems poking out.
A whole new world.
And you can have leaves coming off of other leaves. Like this, I noticed that my composition as a whole was kind of coming to a point, and I don't want it to necessarily feel wide on the top and at the point at the bottom. So I'm adding more stuff on the sides out here to kind of even that out a little bit. I'm gonna do some little bud flowers over here to add, to kind of like round it off, you know? You see?
I do.
And now all of a sudden it feels a little bit more square as opposed to a point.
Yeah. Now, why do you want more of a square versus a point?
That's just a personal preference.
It is?
If you want it to come to a little bit, because you know, especially in like bouquets, it does kind of drape to a point. Then yeah, you can absolutely have that come to that shape. It's just about personal preference and intention. That's all it is. So if that's what I want it to feel like, then what I did initially was like perfect. But for me, compositionally, I wanted it to feel more even on the page. So I rounded the edges.
So potentially, to give you another kind of guideline, you could do like a heart for Valentine's Day.
Oh yeah.
And then inside that, do your flowers and
Oh,
leaves.
totally. That actually was a project of ours. First Valentine's Day,
What?
we did a heart shape and just painted flowers inside of it.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah. We did that with gouache, actually.
Oh, wow.
I just felt like adding some water in there.
Okay.
Because I can. That's going to create a bloom, and I'm lifting up a little bit of color on the inside. I felt like that leaf was just too much of an even dark value. I wanted to bring some light into it, so I'm lifting up a little bit of color. Okay. And again, we're just kind of going and going. And now, as you're adding these smaller elements, there will be areas that feel left out. Like I added a lot of small elements down here, and now this left-hand corner, it's like so bare of the small elements. So I gotta go give it some love, you know? And I'm roughly following my reference photo here in terms of placement and color. However, like I said earlier, react to your painting. React to what your painting is telling you to do. And don't feel like because there's a flower here, you have to put that there. If it does not work on your painting, don't put it there. Adjust.
The paper's like, pour some color on me.
Yep.
Yep.
Guys. Adding some stems to my buds. And then I still feel like I need a little extra love over here, but besides that. Now, the other nice thing that I want to call out is the paper that we send you and the paper that the standard size for watercolor paper in this size is a 9x12. And you might be asking yourself, why is it a 9x12 when it's actually really hard to find frames that are that size? And that is because when you paint, you're not necessarily supposed to use the whole paper as your canvas. It's really good for you to actually crop it and have a specific shape in mind. And I like it, for example, in this, because like let's say even your flower painting, even though we tried to put it in the center, it went up into the left a little bit more, which I think is kind of what's going to happen after I put my leaves in, is it's going to feel shifted to the left. Then when I trim it to fit into a frame, I can cut off the edge and this, so now it's centered. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And also, if you make prints of your work, scanner beds are very rarely 9x12. So I kind of always trim off my painting sides anyway, just so it can fit on my scanner bed, so then I can scan it in. So something that can help you, or if you're like, well, if you're not supposed to use the whole paper, then like, how do I know? Before you start, if you have a specific thought in mind where you're like, I am painting this floral painting that's gonna go inside this size frame, I'm gonna put it here. Then before you start, you can even kind of roughly with a pencil outline that size so you understand. You can use tape to tape it off, you know, just kind of put little markers in where you know that you need to stay within those guidelines. And then you cut the rest off. Okay?
Nice. Okay, check.
Check.
If you didn't say tape, I was going to suggest tape.
I stole your...
Actually, tape would be a really good
Sarah, have you thought about using tape?
tape. It's blue sometimes.
Have you heard of it? It's like dancing.
Dancing with tape.
And if you got to turn your paper so you're not putting your wrist in the painting, you can go ahead and turn it. I got to do that all the time. I always accidentally put my wrist in the painting. Like probably more than I should considering how often I paint. Okay. This actually feels really good.
I agree.
I'm not seeing a huge like bare place. If you are, you can always like do little leaves, you can do little flower buds, you can do like a scribble flower and just kind of do a little bit of a wash places. And another little trick to help you see something compositionally, and this is true for drawing, especially people or animals, is our brain likes to make assumptions. And so if it knows that it's flowers or a dog or something, our brain is gonna work really hard to make it work, but it can still be off. So a good way to test, like look at the composition, look at the proportions of something to see if it's correct, is to turn it upside down. Because looking at this straight on, I'm like, I think this is off center, but I'm not sure. Looking at it upside down, I'm like, oh yeah, it's totally over to one side and up a little bit more than the other. And it was easier for me to see that when it was upside down. And so this is especially helpful if you're trying to paint people or animals, because if it looks funky and you cannot figure out why, or if you want to check and make sure before you move on that the proportions that you drew or painted were correct, go ahead and turn that baby upside down and look at it from upside down. And it's way easier to see what's going on.
Wow.
I know, isn't that weird?
That's super weird.
Okay, that's it. That is our project. All the purple flowers, we did it. You guys, thank you so much for painting with me. I hope that you had fun playing with this. Remember, it's all about just trying something new and experimenting with the colors and the water, the accidental blooms, and letting these things bleed into each other and seeing what they make. And then at the end of the day, if you finish this and you're like, I don't like it, well, one, that's okay. We don't have to love every single thing that we do. Two, it's a piece of paper. You just throw it away. It's not a big deal. Three, do not tie your value as an artist with one painting. It is not fair and it's not accurate or true. So if you mess up, that's normal. That happens to everybody. Don't let that inform you of your decision if you should keep painting or not, because the creative journey and learning anything is up and down the whole time, always. It's not linear. So don't give up. If you've been feeling really good and you try this and you're like, oh, you know, and you feel like you're on a down slope, just keep going and then it will go up again. That's just how it goes. So I appreciate you guys. If you're on Facebook, you can share what you're making. We have a Facebook group called Let's Make Art Watercolor. It's just so you guys can share, learn from each other, ask questions. It's a very supportive and kind community where there's a lot of different skill level in there, and don't be scared of that, because all we're interested in is like learning. That's it. It's not about being the best. It's about helping each other out. Oh, I forgot one thing. Keenan, come on.
Sorry.
Stop distracting me. I just got to put a vein in my flower.
Okay.
I mean in my leaf. Boop, boop, boop. That's it. Sorry about that. Okay. And then if you're on Instagram, you can tag us at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. If you need any of these supplies or you just want to get this kit, which is what I use to teach this project, you can find that at letsmakeart.com. Keenan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invite.
And we'll see you guys later. Bye.